You left your perfume on the pillow and your whispers in the air. Got your face stuck in the mirror and I keep finding your hair. Got a pink box in my closet with the fall pictures we took. Oh, and I keep finding dog ears that you left in my books.
Hello and welcome back, I'm Sean, and today we're taking a look at Samsung's baby flagship, the S25 Base Model, to see if you really need the Ultra or the Plus, or will this get you through most of your tasks. So let's check it out. So kicking things off, I actually really like the fact that you don't necessarily need to go up to the Ultra level to get flagship features. Yes, you're gonna lose some camera hardware, you get smaller battery, but I will tell you more about the performance to justify your purchase. So across the line now, you're getting Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite, so if performance is what you're after, then no worries about getting the Ultra just for the faster processor. So on top of that, all the phones in the S25 series will start getting 12GB of RAMs as standard, so your only concern will be what storage size you need to get. So the smaller 4000 mAh battery definitely pack a punch, and for most day-to-day use, you will get through an entire day with no problems, and we'll take a look at how battery performs shortly. And what I really love is that even the S25, the baby version of the S25 lineup, comes with 8K playback in YouTube, and I know it may not mean much now, but it also means that you get good future-proofing and you don't need to worry when 4K isn't the standard anymore for high-resolution video. Not only that, you also get the same adaptive AMOLED display, giving you dynamic range of 1 to 120Hz refresh rate, and again, this is also in their past phone, so you don't really need the Ultra flagship to enjoy this feature. And when we go into the software side of things, you're also getting the latest One UI 7 regardless of which model you choose, so that's a good thing. And finally, all of the AI features scattered across the S25 series are the same, and you get all the great features of the S25 Ultra in a small and tiny package. Which reminds me, have you felt how light this phone is? Okay, so to the things that I think could be better, so first one is obvious, and I think they need to improve the 25 watts wired charging, especially in a world where Xiaomi, Poco are already providing 45 watts fast charging and also throwing in the charging brick into its package. I think the base S25 can do better with a faster wired charging. Secondly, I know this won't stick, but I really miss having larger storage capacity in phones, and I know you get up to 512GB on the S25 base, but it would be great to either get larger capacity up to 1TB even on the base model, or the very unlikely, maybe expandable storage. And I think Samsung here is doing great with their battery optimization, and I know it's also part of the list of things I love, but I also wish it comes with a bigger battery that could last longer. Another thing that many may not like about a different generation phone is that the S25 is just too similar to the previous generation with very little upgrades and design changes, making it something less appealing for someone who wants to flaunt their new device. After using the natively longer 5x periscope camera on the Ultra, you definitely see a lacking when it comes to zoomability and clarity when using the base S25. With that said, the base S25 comes starting with a price tag of 3,999 Malaysian ringgit, which is decently priced for flagship features in a smartphone, and I love the price to feature ratio you get with the base model. And if you find value in what you hear and like what you see so far, do subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so the YouTube algorithm can pick this up. And if you want to buy any of the base S25, do check out my links below. So from a day-to-day standpoint, I don't find the smaller screen of the S25 being uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Mind you, I usually use phones like the Pro Max series from iPhones or larger 6.7, 6.9 inch Android phones as well. And a smaller 6.2-inch display here does feel well optimized, and my only complaint is that it takes some getting used to when typing in a smaller cramped keyboard. So this isn't much of a problem, and using it for longer would definitely get used to it, especially if you have bigger fingers. Using the smaller keyboard will be quite frustrating. Also, the display here is beautiful, and yes, you get 2340 by 1080 Full HD Plus screen, so no QHD here with the base model, but due to the smaller screen, pixel density feels great, and if you set the font size to be smaller, it does make the phone feel like it has a higher resolution screen. Watching videos, looking at photos, and browsing website looks great with this phone, and when using this phone, I rarely wish that I have more screen real estate, but I do notice that when watching movies with it, I tend to hold the phone closer to my face, probably to get an illusion that the screen is bigger, but on the other hand, day-to-day use, I think it's perfect. You also get a high-quality 10-bit screen, so colors pop nicely even on the base model, and protection-wise, although you're just getting Gorilla Glass Victus 2, I think it's still a great screen that will survive your day day-to-day, and you can always remind yourself that Victus 2 used to be flagship screen from Corning. And although I wish the battery is larger than 4000 mAh, I guess the reason is so Samsung can create a reason for you to buy either the Plus or the Ultra, but from an endurance standpoint, this phone doesn't disappoint. And comparing it to many flagship phones out there from Xiaomi, Redmi or Poco, even the base S25 with a smaller battery outperforms them almost by double. So with my YouTube test running at full brightness and high resolution, the phone performs superb, and after 4 hours the phone's battery dropped to only 87% battery. So that is 4 hours of continuously watching YouTube on high brightness and high resolution. It only dropped down so little. And by the time I reached the 11 hours mark, I still had 52% battery life. By the 12 hours mark, it dipped down to 40% battery life, and mind you that this is where many of the phones from Xiaomi Poco usually dies at around 12 hours mark. And the tiny S25 went on to 19.5 hours before it hits the 5% battery mark. And finally, the phone died at 20 hours and 3 minutes. Very impressive for a tiny 4000 mAh battery. Now, as I mentioned, I wish that the charging could be improved from the 25 watts wired charging speed, but if you think about it, it's still faster than most iPhones in the market. Also, when you charge your phone via Qi wireless charging, you will only get a maximum of 15 watts, and that applies to all phones in the S25 range. So one area I really applaud Samsung for doing is to have the same flagship Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset in all their phones, so that's one less reason for you to consider when choosing between the base, Plus or the Ultra. So running across the board are 12GB of LPDDR5X RAM, extremely powerful performance, and when you use your phone for gaming, you're not going to feel underpowered with this phone. If this phone doesn't run it, then probably no other phones would do it better, except probably for some gaming phones. So if you're interested, you're also getting an octa-core chip that runs upwards of 4.47 GHz, but this is split between the different cores, so only 2 will run 4.47 and another 6 will run 3.53 GHz. So running in the Snapdragon 8 Elite is also the Adreno 830 GPU, which makes playing graphically intense games nice and comfortable with smooth graphics and quick performance. And playing games like PUBG feels good, and I can max it out at Ultra HD graphics and Ultra frame rate with no problems. Games still play smooth with no lags or jerks. However, I don't get to play it at extremely fast frame rates, and I can see it probably goes between 30 to 60 frames per second in gameplay. You get to choose either 256 or 512GB of UFS 4.0 storage with the base model, and since you don't get expandable storage, I think you need to think properly before choosing which model to buy. And running YouTube on this phone is quick and high resolution, and I would run any formats that YouTube has available in their platform now, up to 8K UHD with HDR, so very impressive. So your 4K 60 frames per second HDR videos will work on this phone and will look great. What you miss out with the S25 is the lack of Pro Scaler feature, and although from a day-to-day use without comparing them side by side constantly, you're probably not going to notice a difference, but when you're looking at them side by side, the lack of QHD Plus screen and the Pro Scaler feature does make images and video output look slightly less defined. So from a design standpoint, the S25 is extremely similar to the S24, and unlike the S25 Ultra with a more rounded edge and easier to identify that it's the newer model, when you're using the S25, it's really quite hard to tell that it's the latest model. So at the front and the back of the device, you're going to get Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is strong and will be great for your day-to-day use. And after using larger phones for so long, it's refreshing to actually be using a smaller device like this. It fits in my pocket better, it's easier to hold, easier to reach stuff on the screen. Overall experience is a lot nicer than I would expect. But again, I wish that with the Ultra we also get a size selection, because I might want all the pro features and the camera on the Ultra, but maybe on a smaller body. Also, for the first time if you pick up this phone, you realize how light this phone really is. A combination of materials is what made this phone weigh at only 162 grams. And if you look at a phone from far and without a case, you're gonna see that it looks really much like an iPhone. At the front, you're going to have your display and a front-facing camera at the top. You're going to get buttons on the side of the phone, as well as a Type-C port at the bottom, along with a SIM tray and also speaker grill. And at the back, you're going to get your 3 camera setup as well as an LED flash. So talking about the cameras, and if I could summarize the camera performance on the base S25, I would say it's more than sufficient. To be honest, for most of your day-to-day shots, selfie with your friends, shooting photos of things and humans, the camera you get here is really very good. Yes, Yes, you do lose out the high quality ultra wide lens you get with the Ultra, you get less zoom range, but realistically speaking, very few scenarios will get me wanting more zoom range. And if you really need to zoom in just a little bit more, maybe just walk a couple more steps ahead, and let's also not talk about 20x or 30x zoom since those are just digital zooms. So let's take a look at the details. So with the main camera here, you're shooting at 12 megapixel. Most of your shots are detailed and beautiful. Shots are clean and sharp, very low noise as compared to even flagship iPhones from a few years back. So you won't be yearning for more quality in most day-to-day cases. And the f1.8 lens also means you get beautiful bokeh when shooting objects without even going into portrait mode. And if you really need more detail, perhaps pop it onto the 50 megapixel mode and you will get just a little bit more out of it. If I'm honest, I don't see a major bump in quality when comparing between a 12 megapixel shot and a 50 megapixel shot without really pixel peeping into it. So in my humble opinion, I don't think it's a key feature to hype yourself around it. And to the 12 megapixel ultra wide shot, same lens as last year, so there isn't a lot to talk about here. You will still get the same 0.6x shot, nice and wide, but quality is pretty much the same. There isn't a lot of detail when zooming in, but plenty good if you want to get a nice wide shot. And for the 10 megapixel 3x telephoto zoom, you get a decent pull in, and from day-to-day use, plenty sufficient. If you need more range, probably just move forward a little bit. But if you pixel peep, even in beautiful and bright sunny situation, it's not going to get you as much detail as the main camera, so do take note of that. And the front 12 megapixel f2.2 camera is decent, great for group shots and selfie. Again, very normal performance as we've seen in previous iteration of the S series of phones from Samsung. So a feature that I use a lot is the macro mode on phones, and unfortunately is not something you get with the S25 base model, which honestly is kind of sad. However, you can still use the 3x zoom feature to take something similar to macro shots. So videos are great too, giving you support upwards of 8K UHD. That's a resolution of 7680 by 4320 at 30 frames per second and 4K at 60 frames or 30 frames per second. So I personally prefer 24 frames per second, and I shoot all my travel videos in 24 frames per second. And to enable that, you have to go into Pro Video mode to get access to the either 24 or 30 frames per second for 8K and 24 or 60 frames per second for 4K. So there isn't 120 frames per second in the S25 base model. So sound quality is great on this phone with the dual speaker unit on the S25, and yes, you do get quite a lot of volume when using it, but it doesn't sound the best or as dynamic as headphones would. So volume here is good and gets pretty loud if you want to use the phone speaker to listen to music. And since you don't get a 3.5mm jacks on most modern phones, you're going to rely on wireless earbuds or headphones to do the job. So with the S25, you get support for Bluetooth 5.4, it supports LDAC, aptX, aptX HD and lossless, and those are for all your higher definition playbacks, and it also supports AAC and SBC for more basic needs. So in my opinion, for most people, you really don't need the flagship Ultra, and with that, this is the model for you. However, if you are already using the S24, there isn't really a lot going on here that justifies an upgrade. Perhaps this is more targeted for those who are using the S22 or the S23 and needs a refresh. So if you also want to check out my in-depth discussion about the S25 Ultra, then this video right over here is definitely something you need to check out, and I'll see you over at that video.